Hello everyone, Psychic Readings by Brandi here, and today I want to talk to y'all about the difference between tarot cards and oracle cards. Specifically today, we're going to do this in a two-part series. So specifically today, I'm going to talk to you about oracle cards. Oracle cards are different than tarot cards. Tarot cards are definitely more built off of a systemic framework, traditional framework that dates back ages and ages, lots of symbolism. It follows a particular archetype structure. It also follows kind of like a linear system and almost similar to a deck of playing cards. And so today I'm actually going to talk about oracle decks. I have a lot of oracle decks. Most of them I actually have never used. Some of them have been gifted to me, and some of them I have collected and found at secondhand shops, or I've acquired them throughout the years. And for example, they're no longer produced anymore. So some of my decks are actually really valuable because of that particular feature that they're no longer available anymore. So what is an oracle card? An oracle card is something that is more kind of like an intuitive message. You would draw a card to kind of get, sometimes they have phrases on them, sometimes they're simply images, and sometimes they're a word or a number or a symbol. And you basically draw information from them intuitively. They don't necessarily like follow a particular structural pattern or framework or story. They're more so kind of general guidance cards. So they're really something that are great for folks who are just getting into divinatory tools, and maybe they don't like relying upon their own psychic intuition fully. Maybe they kind of want to draw some more information out using oracle decks, because sometimes when we're really in it, when we're close to something, we can have a difficult time kind of stepping back and actually seeing from a different perspective. So oracle cards are a really good tool for folks who might need to just pull a card or a couple of cards regarding a situation and get some kind of insight or some feedback on how to develop a different perspective. They're also something that you can pull like once a day if you want a topic or like an affirmation to meditate on, or if you're kind of looking for some guidance that you'd want to kind of look to. I'm not someone who uses oracle cards heavily. I just think they're pretty. A lot of them have a lot of beautiful artwork, or some of them are done very creatively. And so those decks I tend to gravitate towards. I only have a few of them, but the decks I'm going to show you today are a larger collection. And you know what? If you want to see me flip through one of these decks in a different video, go ahead and say in the comments which one looks interesting to you, and I'll actually make a video just for you, and I'll obviously put it on my channel, but I can flip through it in that video so that you can see what the cards look like front and back in that deck. And I'll also show kind of like, if there's a book with it, I'll show what the book looks like, the contents of the book, and also what the box looks like, because I know some people have questions usually about, you know, what kind of container does that come in? What is the cardstock like? Is it glossy? Is it matte? You know, those are things that some people think of. How easy are they to shuffle? Stuff like that. So today I'm just going to give you a tour of the decks that I have by name, and I'll show you the boxes, and I'll just kind of like open them up to kind of show you one sample card, and just kind of give you an idea of the actual concept of oracle cards. So there's a lot less to learn with oracle cards. Sorry for the traffic. There's a lot less to learn with oracle cards. It's something you can just kind of like pick up right from the start, and you don't really have to learn a lot about or take classes on or read books about. It's something that you can kind of just, you know, get a deck and then kind of explore with it. And, you know, folks might have particular perspectives on using divinatory tools. It's not something I need. I'm a psychic medium. I have a lot of different intuitive abilities, but sometimes I use them to enhance my abilities or to pull additional information in, or to clarify stuff. And I also really think they're beautiful. A lot of decks are beautiful. But folks who are concerned about using divinatory tools, when it comes to divinatory tools, when it comes to psychic information, my philosophy is always, it has to do with the intent of the person and whether they're calling on information from the highest source for the best outcome for all involved. And so it has to do with the actual person, and what their intentions are, and you know, how that information is going to be used and things like that. So it has nothing to do with the actual card itself. So I just wanted to clear that up for anyone who had questions. I'm sure there are people that have questions about, they've heard the rumors about, can I purchase a deck, you know, like secondhand, or is it acceptable for me to receive a deck as a gift, or do I, you know, can I not buy my first deck? You know, those are all just kind of like old tales that don't really make any sense. And it's kind of one of those things that in the community, folks kind of chuckle at quite a bit. So no, there are no special rules to, you know, oracle cards. You don't have to wait for someone to gift you a deck. You don't have to, you know, worry about those types of things. One thing I will say though, if you're purchasing a deck secondhand, or if someone's gifting you a used deck, or you know, you find a used deck or some sort of instance where a used deck would come into play, you know, even with the new decks, I would say I actually usually do a cleansing of my decks first. And if you're interested in, you know, knowing how I cleanse my decks before I use them, and also sometimes after I use them, please leave a comment and I can make a video on that for you. It's very interesting. There's a lot of different ways you can do it. Okay, so let's get to it. So I have quite a few oracle decks I can show you. I'm actually going to start with this one because a very special person that I admire made this deck. It's called Nature Portals, and this one's by Jamie Sawyer, and I love this box. I actually put a sticker that she gave me on the back of it. But Jamie is a very talented artist. Jamie is also used to do tattoos. And here's what I like about it. It almost reminds me of one of those old CD albums where you can kind of see all the different cards. Here's what's interesting about this deck. So the book itself is online. It's like a PDF. And I like that because it's actually searchable. So you don't have to flip through a paper deck and, you know, maintain a paper deck. If you want to print it out, go for it, you know, but you don't have to. And here's one sample card I'll show you. Let's see, that's the intro card. So the deck is round, obviously. But here's a sample card. So this is the Firefly card. And then that's the back. So they're really beautiful cards. I really love Jamie's work. Jamie's very talented, does a lot of different stuff. If you need a person to make something for you, Jamie will figure that out. So, and Jamie has an Etsy store too. I'll link Jamie's Etsy store into this comment area, or the description for y'all. Okay, and so here's one that I use in my readings often, so folks might see this deck come up. It's called the Super Attractor deck by Gabrielle Bernstein. I love this deck. It's so uplifting and beautiful, and it's just like, I love shuffling it. Here's a sample card. The art in this deck is so gorgeous, and every card has kind of like this really nice manifestation or like affirmation saying on it that really helps you kind of realign your thoughts. It is one of those love and light decks. And so it's something that, you know, you'll want to take into consideration. But I think it's very inspiring, and it's a really good deck for folks that are just kind of breaking into, you know, a world of divinatory work. And I forgot to say, Jamie's deck is very nature-based. So there's a lot of animal symbolism in the deck, and it's really fun to read through her definitions, because some of the stories that are tied to the animals are personal stories for her and her family, and they're hilarious. And so I encourage you to kind of check that one out too. So the answer is simple. This one is one of those decks that I don't really engage with a ton. It's an oracle deck by Sonia Choquette. It's got a very thick book with lots of descriptive information about each card. And the deck is got a really beautiful back. I love that kind of artwork. And then the front, the pictures are kind of cool. They remind me of like a children's book. Put others first, this one says. Okay, so this is an example of another oracle deck. So it's really simple information that you get. My puppy wants attention. It's really simple information that you get, you know, from a card when you draw it. And it's up to you kind of how you want to structure the way you extract that information. Here's one called Soul Coaching. This is another one that's similar to that. The answer is simple. This one's by Denise Lynn. It comes in a similar box, and it's got a very similar book with detailed information on the cards. This is what the back looks like. It's like a dove with some symbolism behind it. And then this is what the other side looks like. Some more kind of really pretty, soft illustrations. And then this one says, Voyage, I'm safe in love no matter where I am. So this is kind of an example of kind of like coaching or affirmation type decks with that super attractor soul coaching, and the answer is simple. One that's a little different, I would say, that I kind of like, and I almost use it as like a flashcard, is this Monology deck. My sister got me this deck, and it's so beautiful. Yasmin Boland did this one, and it's basically every phrase of the moon. I said phrase, every phase of the moon. And so if you look here, this is the back, and this is a matte deck. And when you draw one of these cards, this is kind of what it gives you. It gives you an image of that moon. And this one, for example, is the balsamic moon, a time for healing. Okay, so you can almost use this deck as flashcards to learn about the different cycles of the moon throughout the year. So that's one example of an oracle book that's a little bit more in-depth and complex. And this one has some spreads inside the actual book, along with the card descriptions. Okay. Oh, I think I've got one more here that is kind of like one of those affirmation coaching decks. You can probably hear my dog playing with his toy in the background. Consider yourself blessed. Okay, so this one is Wisdom of the House of Night. This is another one that I have not really interacted with. PC Cast and Colette Baron Reed. So this is again one of those kind of guiding phrases or guiding words. This one is different. It's got like sharper edges. This is the back. It has the triple moon symbol on it. Okay, so this one's a little bit more witchy. The cards themselves do have some numbers on them. And the words themselves, like this one says, summon. Okay, I'm talking kind of about like this person's power, their potential to make things happen. And so this is another example. This is kind of a little witchier. It's interesting. Okay, so that's one. I've got a whole series of, this is an interesting set. I have a whole series of oracle cards by someone named Doreen Virtue. Now, if you've ever heard of her, there's an interesting story about Doreen. So Doreen was actually one of the biggest names in metaphysical work back in the day. I actually have a lot of Doreen's decks. There's an interesting story about this particular person because they were a very big name in the metaphysical community back in the day and made gorgeous, gorgeous decks. My very first deck by this person is the Goddess Guidance Oracle deck. Oh my gosh, I love this deck. Okay, so this was my very first deck that I ever did readings with, okay? So I was doing psychic readings and then I saw this one and I was like, oh, I need to get it. It's got these like gold edges on the side. This is the back, okay? And then you'll draw a card and it's like, it's a goddess. And it's an inclusive deck. It includes a lot of different feminine energy from around the world throughout history. And then here is the book. So Doreen made amazing decks. And what happened was Doreen converted. And then at the time Doreen converted, decided to renounce anything metaphysical, anything new age, and stopped making decks. So one of the things that I ended up coming across, I'm going to show you a couple of her decks from the before time. There's the butterfly deck for life changes. And this one I love. It's just exactly what it is. It has butterflies on it. This is the back. And you know I love butterflies. I include that symbolism in a lot of what I do. And then this is the front. So this is an example of a card where grief work might be needed. Same kind of concept with the book. You can see there's information on the cards. Also the gold edges, I love that. So there's another one here, Past Life Oracle by Doreen Virtue and Brian Weiss. So if you don't know who Brian Weiss is, Brian Weiss does a lot of writing on past life experiences. And so that's somebody that folks were really into back in the day. He wrote a book called Many Lives, Many Masters, which I think is interesting. He actually talks a lot about an experience that he had with someone as a client. And I think they actually ended up getting married. I'm not sure though. So this is the book for that one. It's the same concept. A lot of these Oracle decks have like the same layout with their books and stuff like that. Again, the gold edges, okay? This is the back side. It's like you're going through a doorway or something. And then this is the front. Okay, Unrequited Love. And so that's another interesting one. So Doreen converted and decided to kind of renounce everything that Doreen had done prior to converting. And so all of the newer decks that she did were based on angels. And I can't recall if she did them after she converted or before. But this one, for example, is an Archangel deck. It's pretty beat up, but it's definitely seen a lot of use. But I got a lot of Doreen's decks secondhand, and they're worth a lot of money because they're not made anymore. And I don't know if the person who ran the secondhand shop that I got them from just didn't know what they had. But each of these decks is worth between $70 and $120, depending upon their condition. So here's an example. Again, this one is a little bit thinner. And this one for the Archangel deck, this is what the back looks like. It's beautiful. And then this is what the front looks like. So this one says creative writing. So really, it kind of gives you an idea of what the Oracle decks look like. And how you can use them. I'm just going to show you the covers of the other ones. So she's got one called Angel Therapy. Okay. And then here's another one called Your Life Purpose. That one's really pretty too. And again, if you want me to show you any of these decks, just comment and I'd be happy to make a video with the decks. Flip through them for you. Here's another one that's an angel related one. I actually don't work a ton with angels, but they've been coming up a lot in my readings. So I think I'm gonna have to start learning a little bit more about that type of information. Okay, so here's one called Angel Blessings. This one has really pretty cards also. The print in this book is a little bit smaller. It's almost like a small novel. Cards of sacred guidance and inspiration. So the back of this one is just clouds. Looks like a photo actually of clouds. Yep. And then here's the front. This one has a little bit more Christian inspiration. And this one is talking about harmony. Okay. Talking about the angel Charmaine. And so this one uses a little bit of archetype from the Bible. Okay, so what else do we have? We have some other ones here too. So these ones I have never worked with. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of show them to you. I don't know a lot about them. So we've got one here called Divine Guidance. It has fractals. So it's kind of like, you know, real psychedelic type deck by Soul Vibes Metaphysical. And this is what the back looks like. Okay. And then the front looks like this. Okay. So the cards are a little bit different on this one. They're fractals. So you know how folks sometimes will crystal gaze, or they'll go out into nature and they'll reflect. It's kind of one of those decks where you kind of stare into the fractal. And the guidebook is thin because it's really kind of up to you. There is kind of a blurb for each card. But this one is more like staring into the abyss. It's kind of fun. Back in the 80s and the 90s, they had all those fractal posters in classrooms. So I feel like anyone who enjoyed those fractal posters or like those optical illusion posters would probably really like that deck. Okay, so here's another one that I got from someone, Pagan Lenormand. So Lenormand, some folks treat it like it's tarot. Some folks, you know, just say, you know, it's an oracle system. This deck is actually really pretty. I haven't used this deck either. Everything going forward, I have not used. But here's the back. It looks like a Celtic knot. It's really pretty. And then the front, this is an interesting one. So it's got like a playing card associated with it, a number, as well as an image. And so this one is a little bit different. Here's the inside of the book. It's a little bit more with regards to features and things like that. Very wordy. And that is an example of a Lenormand oracle card. So when I say Lenormand, that's usually kind of like a school of thought, I guess, or like a structure of how the cards are created. Lenormand is not tarot, but it's also like in the middle of tarot and oracle. And so it's supposed to be a lot easier to understand than tarot. It's just not something that I'm really familiar with, but it's basically like another school of tarot or another school of organizing your thoughts around that. Okay, so this next one is called the Archetypes Oracle. It doesn't necessarily say that it's an archetype, but, or pardon me, that's an oracle. It says Archetypes, the Wild Unknown, and it's by Kim Krantz. And this one is like, it's like basically getting into Fort Knox. There's a sleeve, there's a big box for it. And then when you open the box, there's the book. There's a ribbon to hold everything in place and pop it back out. The book literally looks like a book. It's really pretty, and I like how I like the look of it because it's almost reminds me of reading someone's journal with all the footnotes and the side notes and the symbolism and things like that. So this one is a little different. I also have not used this one, but then when you go into the box, you have another box for the deck itself, and this is another one that's round. It's almost like a hat box. So here's the back. It looks like a diamond. And then here is the front. So it is, this one's the Lovers. So this is kind of like a tarot, it looks like. Anima Mundi. Yeah, that might be the world. Yeah, I mean, maybe this one is a tarot deck. I'm just not quite sure. So this is another one that I wanted to include, just so you can kind of see, you know, there's a lot of decks out there that really, they blur the lines, you know, and that's okay, because sometimes linear thought and, you know, sticking to kind of like an older system of thought, it's no longer productive, and we need to shake things up a little bit and redefine some things a little bit. Got 3 decks left. So I've got this one here. It's called Reality Check, a dastardly deck designed to destroy your delusions. Okay, so when you see sometimes people like making fun of how their decks called them out, this is an example of probably one of those decks. Jesse Knox did this deck. It comes in a tiny box, and this is the back. It looks like a Merkaba on the back, which is a form of sacred geometry. The book is tiny. It's just a little kind of folded piece of paper. And it shows off the suits. I guess there are some suits. Oh yeah, I guess it is kind of a tarot deck. It's got more suits than normal though, it looks like. Okay, so I showed you the back. And here's an example of the front. This almost reminds me of like a game that you would play with people, the way it looks. Adversity ignites deep desire for prosperity. This is definitely a tarot card because it says 5 of Pentacles on it, and it tells you hardship, outcast, unemployment. Okay, so I'm probably gonna include this in my tarot deck video as well, because I did not realize it was a tarot deck. I thought that it was an oracle deck. I got 2 more decks. So this one's called Dark Mirror Oracle Cards. This one definitely looks a little darker, kind of eerie or scary or spooky. Let's see. So this comes in like a plain card set. So this might have been kind of one of those affordable ones that you'd get, you know, for kind of like, just kind of like for funsies. So yeah, this is the back. It looks very like dark and mysterious. And then this is the front here. Interesting. Wow, these are very, wow. These are kind of, got distracted here. Interesting. Okay, so here's one that I can show that's peachy. This one says Black Flower Fragrance, and it looks like she's holding like dark rose petals. So here's an example of this deck. So it's very dark and mysterious. Okay, so this looks like it might be kind of like a shadow work deck. Okay, and then we've got, this is another example of oracle cards. So there's a lot of different divinatory tools out there. Astrology is, I feel, a divinatory tool also. So it's interesting because this is an oracle deck about astrology, kind of like how we had an oracle deck about moon work. So this is called Astrology Reading Cards, okay? And it actually is like this little, kind of like, open it up, it's got the magnetized thing. And then this one is a way for you to kind of pull oracle cards on astrological transits and like houses and things like that. So here's the book, and here's an example. This is a Capricorn card that you might pull. It's a pretty big book with lots of words, it looks like. Here's the back, the planet cards, it says. And you flip it, and it gives you information about this particular card, planet related card. But I noticed that they have zodiac sign cards also. So it looks like it's kind of like almost a learning system. Like, I wonder if you can use this as flashcards also, similar to the moonwork deck that I was showing you earlier. Yeah, because here's one, the back says the house cards, and then when you flip it, you can see this one talks about your 5th house. So yeah, this is a really seems like a way for you to pull cards on astrology, but not necessarily about your chart, obviously, because you're pulling just randomly from a deck, but to kind of get some guidance that you might need. If you know a little bit about astrology, I think this might be a fun deck to use as an oracle deck. Also, maybe if you want to use them as flashcards, that might be one. So these are my oracle decks. I only use a couple. I really only use my butterfly deck, my goddess guidance deck, my Monology deck, and my super attractor deck. These four are my absolute fave. I love them so much. So if you get a reading from me, most likely, if I incorporate an oracle card, it's probably from one of these four decks. Okay, so if anyone wants me to flip through a deck, please, again, comment below, and I will make another video here about tarot cards. I'll show you my tarot decks, and we'll do it all over again. It's gonna be great. Okay, so thanks for tuning in. Psychic Readings by Brandi signing off. Have a lovely evening. Mwah.